everybody, and welcome to this Tuesday edition of NMH at 1, where we share the news-making headlines from Namibia and beyond. Also on the menu today is economic news and sports updates, all brought to you by me, Diana Master. Headlining today's show, water remains a contentious issue around the globe, but more so in Africa. The Algemeine Zeitung reports on what Namibia is doing to address the problem. The crack on the shoulder of the M118 between Rosh Pana and Oranjemund that was first spotted in February 2021 appears to be getting bigger. And the United Nations 2022 Population Award was presented to Namibia's Deputy Minister of Information and Communication Technology, Emma Theophilus, in New York yesterday. Stick around for these stories and more. In today's midday news update, disgruntled National Housing Enterprise employees allege that the current administration under Chief Executive Disbetis Mukulu and the board have failed to improve the performance of the institution both financially and operationally. Employees through the Public Service Union of Namibia are staging a countrywide demonstration that began yesterday and will end on Friday. We're now going to take a quick ad break, and when we return, we get into our visual news. Stay tuned.
Your kiss is set as a summer breeze, and you lift me up when you smile at me. When I'm with you, boy, I feel so fine. You make it summertime.
Now getting into our visual news, starting off in Karas, equipment and material was handed over to successful beneficiaries to facilitate the socio-economic empowerment of women and men in the Karas region last week. Monique Adams was at the event. Let's have a look.
Economically viable and sustainable projects. These recipients were selected from all over the Karas region, and the total cost for 2022 amounts to approximately 75,000. And I hope that this amount will double 2023.
Following the arrival of good rains, after bad drought conditions experienced for many years that have led to water shortages in many places, the Karas region's farmers were pressed to their knees by the invasion of the brown locust swamp, which has adversely affected the agricultural sector. Therefore, holistic and continuous government interventions in support are needed to mitigate the impact of these phenomena. Nevertheless, we remain optimistic about the government's re-emerging strategic approach through the Harambe Prosperity Plan 2. The government has established the Ministry of Gender Equality, Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare to address gender equality, promote sustainable socio-economic development opportunities for the attainment of gender equality, as well as the well-being of the children, and eradicate poverty through the S&D support scheme.
The Ministry of Gender, we are so happy to make sure that we give it to the beneficiaries, Ms. Belinda Polos. So we make sure. She's also hard working, I know her. Oh, you know that? Thank you.
Now in this second clip, the Oshikoto region held its Regional Education Summit at Ekuko Secondary School in Umutia, where learners were given a platform to air their grievances and suggest ways the Ministry of Education can make schooling accessible for them. Have a look.
Teachers don't want to answer us. It seems like the principal or the teachers need to give us more right for us to express our rights or our feelings, for us to report the teachers that don't want us to ask the questions. Because the teachers will have that power of saying they won't, like, the teachers will feel that we don't have that right of going to report, for example, to the principal. Because some of us, we fear that if we happen to go to the principal to report that we are grade 12E or grade 12B, and this teacher, Ms. Ho, don't want us to ask questions, there will be a conflict between a teacher and a learner. Therefore, we must give in a freedom of speech for us to report those teachers who don't want us to raise our questions. That's my suggestion.
20 to 15 learners in one room. I think the government should, like she said, should raise funds and they should increase the rooms in the hostels. They should increase more buildings, build more buildings to accommodate the learners. We understand the population is increasing and there is a need for schools, but the schools are already cramped and it's not healthy. Hygiene is not just there.
Now today is World Blood Donor Day, which aims to raise global awareness about the need for safe blood and blood products for transfusion, highlight the critical contribution voluntary, unpaid blood donors make to national health systems, as well as support national blood transfusion services in strengthening and expanding their voluntary blood donor programs. If you've ever wondered how the process works, Jareen Hoff has more.
What happens to donated blood? This blood goes through a series of steps before it's ready to help patients in need. But what exactly does the blood journey look like? Let's take a look. Step 1 of the donation is when you first arrive at the blood donation clinic. Then staff will conduct a mini physical, measuring your pulse blood pressure and hemoglobin levels. If you are healthy and able to donate, staff will collect about a pint of blood plus a few test tubes for testing purposes. The whole blood donation takes about 30 minutes from start to finish, but the actual drawing of blood takes only about 10 minutes. After the donation, your blood will be placed in a cooler before traveling to a processing center. For step 2 of the process, information about your donation will be scanned into a computer database. Most blood donations are spun in centrifuges to separate them into 3 transfusible components, namely red blood cells, platelets, and plasma. The next step is testing. In the meantime, the test tubes with your blood samples will have arrived at a testing laboratory. Here a dozen tests are performed to determine your blood type and check for infectious diseases. Within 24 hours, these results will be electronically transferred to the processing center. If a test result is positive, you'll be notified and your donation will be discarded. Storage is step 4. Once testing is complete and your donation is approved for use, it will be labeled and stored. Different components are stored in different ways and for different lengths of time. For example, red cells are stored in refrigerators for up to 42 days, while platelets are stored at room temperature for up to 5 days while continuously being agitated to prevent platelets from clumping together. Plasma is stored in freezers for as long as a year. Next, your donation is ready to be transported. It can be sent at a moment's notice to hospitals at any time of day, any day of the week. Hospitals do keep some blood products on their shelves, but it needs to be constantly replenished as it is used. So how is your blood transfused? People need blood transfusions for a variety of reasons, from serious injuries to childbirth emergencies to cancer treatments. If a patient requires a blood transfusion, the doctor must first determine the type of transfusion needed. Patients suffering from anemia or blood loss may receive red blood cells to increase the hemoglobin and iron levels. Those unable to make enough platelets due to illness or chemotherapy may receive platelet transfusions, and patients with liver failure or severe infections and serious burns may receive plasma transfusions as part of their treatment. As you can see, a life-saving donation starts with a generous donor whose blood travels through expert testing and processing and is distributed through a dedicated team of professionals who provide it to a person in need. Start your own blood donation journey and help save a life.
Now moving on to current affairs, we'll be looking at some of the stories hitting the headlines in local dailies. But first, a quick ad break. Thank you for staying with NMH at 1. We now take a look at what the lead stories are in Namibia's daily newspapers. Starting off with Algemeine Zeitung, Namibia continues its efforts to join the Water Convention and Protocol on Water and Health of the UN Economic Commission for Europe. Our Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Forestry took part in a meeting in May, and last Friday, Minister Karl Schledwein not only represented Namibia but also took part virtually in another meeting where he spoke on behalf of the continent. As president of the African Ministers' Council on Water, the high-profile meeting dealt with the lessons and perspectives for cooperation between Africa and Europe in the management of water resources. On its page 3, in line with the 5th National Development Plan and the Harambee Prosperity Plan 2, the government developed guidelines for sustainable small-scale fisheries in 2020. The action plan for the years 2022 to 2026 has now been officially presented in Swakopmund. This action plan aims to recognize the important role of small-scale fishing and the role it plays in socio-economic growth and economic change, Fisheries Minister Derek Claassen said. Moving over to Namibian Sun, Namibia Public Workers Union, also known as NAPU, Education and Strategic Planning Head Gideon Thomas said the union and its sister affiliate, the Namibia National Teachers Union, also known as NANTU, have been given until Friday to finish a ballot process which will dictate their course of action. The process was put in place in May for the members to collectively decide the next step in their fight for salary increments. According to Thomas, the matter is no longer in the hands of the government, and the unions no longer need any feedback from the state regarding their next move. On its page 2, MTC has announced its shareholders will receive a 37-cent per share dividend on 8 July. The announcement came after the company released its interim results for the financial half year ending 31 March, for which the interim dividend will be paid. The statement shows a dip in company profit but boasts growth in revenue of 4.64% to 1.45 million Namibian dollars, up from a previous 1.39 million Namibian dollars. According to MTC, it generated higher revenues by responding to customer needs for faster, simpler, more convenient and more cost-effective telecom services. Now, the crack on the shoulder of the M118 between Rosh Pana and Oranjemund that was first spotted in February 2021 appears to be getting bigger. The crack, that is about 25 kilometers from Rosh Pana and 75 kilometers from Oranjemund, has not yet been repaired. According to the Roads Authority spokesperson Helene Philemon, the RA is completing the investigation into this section of road and rock slopes. The investigation should have been completed by April 2022. However, according to Philemon, persistent flooding of the Orange River has led to a delay in the investigation. On page 2 of the Republican, the United Nations 2022 Population Award was presented to Namibia's Deputy Minister of Information and Communication Technology, Emma Theophilus, in New York yesterday. The award is presented to individuals and institutions that highlight and address population issues. Theophilus was praised specifically for her work on women empowerment and teen sexual and reproductive health in Namibia. The Deputy Minister was born in 1996 and at the age of 23 is one of Africa's youngest MPs. We're now going to take a quick ad break and we'll take a look at what's headlining the Namibian today right after the break.
My.NA Property Show provides viewers with the best in-class content, engaging interviews, as well as a showcase of the latest property-related products and services. If you would like to feature your brand or your campaign on this platform, contact My.NA at synergy.com.na. My.NA Properties, more than just a roof over your head.
You're watching NMH at 1, continuing with our newspaper review, headlining the Namibian today. The Anti-Corruption Commission is investigating a Namibian company that allegedly faked a letter of award using a Ministry of Health and Social Services letterhead and the signature of its executive director, Ben Nangombe. Records of the Business and Intellectual Property Authority, also known as BIPA, show that the company Victoria Twelimona Trading CC is owned by Victoria George. The investigation comes 2 years after the ACC received information about possible irregularities in the procurement of a personal protective equipment tender. On page 3 of the Namibian, DNA evidence has linked Windhoek resident Jeremiah van Wyk to the rape of a 5-year-old girl nearly 3 years ago. DNA test results show that sperm samples collected from the private parts of the girl that Van Wyk is alleged to have raped on 1 August 2019 match his profile. Moving over to New Era, former Cabinet Minister Pendukeni Ivula Itana has questioned the rationale of 50-50 gender representation, arguing that despite women's extensive involvement in politics, they are underrepresented in high-ranking political and state-level positions. Speaking at the SWAPO Women's Council Regional Leadership Orientation Program in Otapi last week, Ivula Itana said that from her own experience, we have adopted the policy of 50-50 gender representation, but I realize this policy is being used to downgrade the importance of women. On page 3, the Namibian Tourism Board has jumped on board to denounce the latest decision by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention to categorize Namibia as a high-risk country, arguing that the ranking lacks scientific data. The CDC moved Namibia to level 3 high-risk category on Monday, joining other countries like Guyana, Mongolia, and St. Kitts and Nevis. Now from inside Namibia Media Holdings, on Market Watch, leading the Market Watch, growing food shortages may represent the same health threat to the world as the COVID-19 pandemic, a leading global health figure has warned. Rising food and energy prices, in part sparked by the war in Ukraine, could kill millions both directly and indirectly. Peter Sands, the executive director of the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis and Malaria, told Reuters in an interview. According to the Agribank in Namibia, the outlook for global acute food insecurity in 2022 is expected to deteriorate further relative to 2021. The prevailing drought, high energy prices, and the COVID-19 pandemic also worsened the availability and accessibility of food in Namibia. Featured on the front page of The Zone today, Brian Munango spoke to Mwatile Kapolola, a passionate young artist who taught himself everything there is to know about paint and working with paint. We're now going to take a quick ad break and return with our economic news. Sunset News is a daily news show focusing on national headlines as well as international news. If you'd like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, please contact sunset@synergy.com.na. Sunset News. Don't end your day without us. Now starting off our economic news story, major tampon manufacturers in the United States have pledged to make more sanitary products to address shortages in the country. One firm told the BBC that the pandemic had caused staff shortages at its plants. Social media users have been posting about their experiences as they struggle to find sanitary products. One Reddit user said they visited 8 stores to find tampons with a cardboard applicator before deciding to buy them online at a noticeable markup. This comes as the war in Ukraine is making the raw materials used in sanitary products more costly. The shortage is also adding to concerns that supply chain disruptions could further push up prices for essential goods around the world. Now, the UK government has published plans to get rid of parts of the post-Brexit deal it agreed with the EU in 2019. It wants to change the Northern Ireland Protocol to make it easier for some goods to flow from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. However, the EU opposes the move, saying going back on the deal breaches international law. The protocol is the part of the Brexit deal which keeps Northern Ireland in the EU's single market for goods. It prevents a hard border with the Republic of Ireland, but it means checks on some goods arriving into Northern Ireland from other parts of the UK, a situation opposed by unionists in Northern Ireland who argue it creates a trade border in the Irish Sea. And now let's take a look at our economic indicators. Now, a Zimbabwean opposition party says the remains of a missing supporter have been found in a well, ending a widely publicized search. Stick around for the full story coming right up after the break. You're still watching NMH at 1. We now take a look at the latest news in our neighboring countries, followed by news from the rest of the globe. Starting off 3 years after Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir was ousted in a popular uprising, former members of his National Congress Party are being given influential posts by the military junta, raising fears that they are making a political comeback. A fragile transitional government ended last year after General Abdel Fattah Burhan carried out a coup against his civilian partners who had played a pivotal role in the mass protests against Bashir's authoritarian rule. Many see the top generals, all members of a security committee appointed by Bashir in the dying days of his regime, as favoring the NCP, which imposed a strict version of Sharia law when in power. Hamza Balol, a senior member of the pro-democracy Forces for Freedom and Change movement, which shared power with the generals until the coup, believes the military has sabotaged the transition by protecting the NCP. He said the coup leaders had been vigorously cooperating with the leaders of the previous regime to gain a political base. More than 100 people have been killed since last October's coup in irregular protests demanding a return to civilian rule. Now, online platforms like Twitter, Facebook and TikTok will be required to register and open offices in Nigeria and appoint contact persons with the government and draft regulations from the Information Technology Development Agency shows. The Code of Practice for Interactive Computer Service Platforms Internet Intermediaries was meant to curb online abuse, including disinformation and misinformation, the National Information Technology Development Agency said in the regulations posted on its website. A statement from the agency's spokesperson dated June 13 said the regulations were developed with input from Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Google, and TikTok, among others. The platforms are popular in Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation with more than 200 million people. NIDTA said the platforms would be required to provide users or authorized government agencies relevant information, including for purposes of preserving security and public order. In our next story, the Court of Appeal in London on Monday rejected an appeal filed by immigration rights advocates and public employee unions that sought an injunction to temporarily block deportation flights which are scheduled to begin on Tuesday. Raza Hussain, one of the lawyers for the migrants, had argued that the government's plan involved the forced removal of asylum seekers to a country they don't want to travel to as part of a policy intended to deter others from trying to enter Britain. This amounts, on any view, to a serious interference with basic dignity where those individuals have already suffered significant trauma and have mental health issues, he said in the court filings. The case before the Court of Appeal in London was filed by a coalition of groups, including immigration rights advocates. They want to overturn a lower court ruling that would allow the first deportation flight to take off today. Now, a Mexican political advisor has been killed by a lynch mob after child kidnapping accusations were spread on messaging groups, authorities say. The full story coming up after the break as we move on over to international news. Now, a Mexican political advisor has been killed by a lynch mob after child kidnapping accusations were spread on messaging groups, authorities say. Daniel Picasso, 31, was attacked and beaten by a crowd of around 200 people in the central state of Puebla. He had been visiting the town of Paplatlazolco when he was cornered by the mob before being dragged into a local field and set on fire. Local officials called the act an act of barbarism. Picasso was visiting his grandfather's house in the town when rumors began to spread on local WhatsApp group chats that he had been involved in the kidnapping of a child. According to local media, the mob then cornered and attacked Picasso and his two companions before dragging him to a local field. Police attempted to intervene and placed him in a patrol car, but were quickly overwhelmed by villagers who doused Picasso in petrol before setting him alight. His body was later recovered by authorities. Cuba has sentenced 381 people for taking part in rare anti-government protests last summer, with some jailed for up to 25 years. The Attorney General's office said 297 had received prison terms for crimes of sedition, public disorder, assault, or robbery. A minority were given the option to complete community service instead. Thousands of Cubans took part in the demonstrations across the communist-run island, chanting for freedom. The protests, the largest in decades, came amid a severe economic crisis, with protesters voicing anger over price increases and shortages of food and medicine. Unauthorized public gatherings are illegal in Cuba, and more than 1,000 people were arrested. Images on social media showed what appeared to be security forces detaining, beating, and pepper spraying some of the protesters. Those sentenced including 16 young people aged 16 to 18, according to the country's public prosecutor on Monday. We're now going to take a quick ad break and return with our local sports news.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, welcome to another exciting edition.
Now let's dive into the world of sports, starting off with our local sports stories. The Namibian Enduro Club hosted the third round of the ARC Trading National Championship Series at Itumba, south of the capital, this past weekend, where Quinton van Rooyen once again made his mark on his Sherco motorcycle. He won his second consecutive event out of 3. Even though he is in a class of his own, he is still not safe because Kone Visser and Stuart Pearce can still overtake him in the remaining 5 competitions. 48 riders participated in 5 different classes. Now, boxer Jonas Matthias says he has had sleepless nights since last month's fight against Matthias Hayter, which he feels he should have won. Matthias lost the fight on 27 May by unanimous decision. The win saw his opponent defending the World Boxing Association Pan-African Super Bantam title and claiming the vacant World Boxing Organization Africa Super Bantam title. The boxer, coached by Tobias Nashilongo and Eliphas Namunjebo, put up one of his greatest performances in the ring despite being outpointed by Hayter Matthias. Matthias, however, still feels he won and says the judges were too lenient towards Hayter. Speaking to Sport Rap, Matthias said he enjoyed the fight from start to finish. The fight for me was nice, and I think I won 8 to 7 rounds in that fight out of 12. I think my fans and Hayter's fans are asking for a rematch. Now, the two champions of the 2022 Rossing Virtual Marathon race each received a development bonus worth 20,000 Namibian dollars from Rossing Uranium before the weekend. Jeremiah Shaliakwe and Anna Amutoko set the fastest times over the marathon distance in March this year, thus winning the grand prizes. The main sponsor, OTB, added a development bonus of 20,000 Namibian dollars in the form of a voucher that can be used at the local sports shop group OTB for the purchase of sports equipment or equipment to promote their career. With this year's virtual presentation, the marathon attracted more than 500 runners from across the country. Right after the break, we will highlight news from the international sports scene. Stay with us.
AgriMonitor is jou weeklikse landboukundige program wat jou die jongste nuus in die landbouverwante bedryf en onderwerpe wat daaraan gekoppel is, bring. Vir enige advertensie of nuusverwante navrae, kontak agrimonitor@synergy.com.na.
Starting off our international sports stories, Australia became the 31st team to book their place at the 2022 World Cup after beating Peru on penalties in an intercontinental playoff in Qatar. Goalkeeper Andrew Redmayne, who replaced Matt Ryan just before the shootout for his third cap, was the hero, saving Alex Valera's final kick. This will be Australia's 5th World Cup in a row, having qualified every time since 2006. They will be in Group D alongside holders France, Denmark and Tunisia. The World Cup's final team will be decided on Tuesday when Costa Rica faces New Zealand at the same venue at the Ahmad bin Ali Stadium. Now, former Manchester United and Chelsea chief executive Peter Kenyon is leading a consortium hoping to buy Everton. The club's owner Farhad Moshiri is known to be open to investment options around the funding of the new stadium. However, he has not ruled out selling equity stakes in the club. Now a director of football consultancy business Opto Advisors, Kenyon has worked on several deals in recent years and was linked with a bid for Newcastle United before their Saudi takeover. The group, led by former Chelsea chief, is understood to include wealthy US-based businessmen Maciej Kamiński and John Thornton. As first reported by The Telegraph, talks are still at an early stage. Now, the Golden State Warriors are one win away from a 7th NBA title after Andrew Wiggins inspired his team to a 104-94 win over the Boston Celtics. The Warriors led the series 3-2 and can claim a 4th title in 8 years with a victory in Game 6 of the best-of-7 contest in Boston on Thursday. Wiggins led Golden State with 26 points, while Klay Thompson added a further 21. Wiggins' performance comes 36 years after his father, Mitchell, came off the bench to lead the Houston Rockets to victory against the same opponents in Game 5 of the 1986 NBA Finals. We're now going to take a quick ad break and return with the highlights from today's broadcast, just in case you missed them. Sunset News is a daily news show focusing on national headlines as well as international news. If you'd like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, please contact sunset@synergy.com.na. Sunset News. Don't end your day without us. Thank you for staying with NMH at 1, and if you have just joined us, here are your news highlights. 3 years after Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir was ousted in a popular uprising, former members of his National Congress Party are being given influential posts by the military junta, raising fears that they are making a political comeback. A Mexican political advisor has been killed by a lynch mob after child kidnapping accusations were spread on messaging groups, authorities say. Daniel Picasso, 31, was attacked and beaten by a crowd of around 200 people in the central state of Puebla. The Namibian Enduro Club hosted the third round of the ARC Trading National Championship Series at Itumba, south of the capital this past weekend, where Quinton van Rooyen once again made his mark on his Sherco motorcycle. The UK government has published plans to get rid of parts of the post-Brexit deal it agreed with the EU in 2019. It wants to change the Northern Ireland Protocol to make it easier for some goods to flow from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. However, the EU opposes the move, saying going back on the deal breaches international law. Those have been your highlights. Thank you for staying with NMH at 1 and spending your lunch hour with me, Diana Master. Remember to tune in every weekday at 1 p.m. as we take you through the latest happenings in Namibia and beyond. But for now, stay with us for a compilation of news from across Namibia in our regional review segment.
Good day and welcome to another episode of Regional Review. I'm Kenya Kamboya, the Namibia Media Holdings correspondent in the Northeastern regions. On today's show, we'll be giving you highlights of events that unfolded in the Northeastern regions over the past week. Meanwhile, in history, today is World Blood Donor Day, so check out the next video. Not much has been happening in the northeastern regions over the past week, apart from the two dominating events, which was the Kavango East State of the Region Address, which was delivered by Honorable Wakudumo last week Wednesday, while the Kavango West Governor Sirka Osigo delivered her State of the Region Address last week Friday. Both governors accounted for what or how resources were appropriated to their respective constituencies, what has been done, how many balls were drilled, how the education sector was uplifted, the issue of youth unemployment, as well as some of the key developmental projects, which they said some were completed, while some still remain idle despite numerous years of waiting by the residents to benefit from them. So to get a analysis of what transpired, or having followed the addresses, we spoke to APP Secretary General Mr. Vincent Kanyetu, who shared his insight as to what he really thought of the State of the Region Address, and this is what he had to say.
We are very much disappointed. We are very, very much disappointed in the sense that when you look at the addresses itself, let's start with Kavango East, for example. Kavango East governor's statement reported on a number of things that he said that was done within the constituency to bring about development. But it's disappointing to say that, truly, to build 5 toilets in a constituency that is more than 10,000 inhabitants, what difference does it make to build 5 toilets, for example? You know, very little was said about what is the way going forward on how to create about employment, for example, women empowerment, reduce crime and corruption within the Kavango East region. Nothing little. Meaning that our regional government, regional leadership, we are hopeless to say. We are hopeless because all the councillors, including the governors themselves, doesn't have a clear direction as to where exactly do they want to take the people. They are just like cry babies, for example. crybabies to say, no, we are calling upon government to do this, we are calling upon government to do this, instead of them coming out and tell the public that, okay, with these challenges, for example, with the birth certificate and national document, what is it that the region has done together with the Home Affairs Ministry? They have the power. They have the power to speak to the line ministries and say, okay, our people are facing challenges, more particularly in Rundu, for example. Rundu is a heavily populated town in Namibia, but majority of the people are suffering because they don't have national documents. They don't have any documents at their disposal, while government has programmed to provide social grants and old age pension. You know, there's nothing mentioned as what efforts are done. And looking at Kavango West, for example, you know, we heard about this vocational training center. The groundbreaking ceremony was done over the years ago. But up to now, a governor is crying in front of camera, saying that they are disappointed to hear that it's going to be re-advertised. What is your office doing? What has your office done? What are the regional councillors are doing? What is the regional...
Our second story emanates from the Kavango East State of the Region address as delivered by Honorable Boniface Wakodumo. He singled out Recon Africa as a company that has been doing much in terms of humanitarian assistance in the Kavango East region, which he indicated that the people of Kavango are indebted to Recon Africa. However, there's been mixed feelings from those who follow the story on social media and all the NMH platforms. However, Wakodumo cited some of the key points at which Recon Africa has assisted the communities in which they are operating, such as the drilling of boreholes, sending of 5 students to various tertiary institutions, the financial assistance to the COVID relief program, whereby they gave around 7.5 million to assist in getting people vaccinated in the Kavango East region. So that is basically what Wakodumo indicated, to say that no, based on this humanitarian assistance by Recon Africa, Kavango people are indebted to Recon Africa for their generous assistance towards the communities. However, he's making this sentiment at a time whereby there are still some environmentalists from local international institutions, organizations that are calling on Recon Africa to stop in their tracks in regards to these oil and gas exploration activities that they are conducting. They are citing that they might pollute underground water, and seeing that the oil exploration activities are taking nearby the Kavango Delta, they're also citing that this might disrupt the ecosystem in this environment. So therefore, they are calling for Recon Africa to be stopped in their tracks. However, government, as you all know, is the last say, and government has already assured the public that whatever Recon Africa is doing, they are being monitored with an eagle's eye, and they won't be allowed to do something like which is regarded as fracking. Fracking is now the unconventional method of drilling for oil and all that. So this is one of the reasons why most of these environmentalist companies are against Recon Africa, because they are afraid that they might do some kind of fracking. However, Recon, as well as government, has assured that there will be no fracking.
Mr. Matherius, thank you very much for your time. We just want to engage you on one important aspect in terms of the education fraternity. As you might be aware, as an educator yourself, it's the holiday for learners and teachers. So I just want your message to the boy and girl child. What do you think should preoccupy them during this time of rest, and what shouldn't they do?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Holidays are good moments for everybody, but now to the children, learners, it is now the time to go and assist their parents rather than wasting this special time on something useless. For instance, they must not involve themselves in activities like alcohol, drug abuse, and other activities. You know, in the region, this is one of the regions that is statistically a girl child is the pregnancy statistic is very high. So it is a high time that they go and assist in the field and get rest. When they come back, they are well prepared and continue where they stopped.
And in regards to the boy child?
It is also a responsibility of a boy child in order to reorganize themselves. Where they did not do well during the very first trimester, they must come back strong, go home, assist with taking care of their parents, goats, cattle, and other activities that's supposed to be done. Not necessarily to waste time here in town, because in town is not a good place for learners. You know, it is better for them to go out at farms, the villages, so that they can relax. They do activities that can empower them. Read more, prepare.
Talking about the town, like Rondo is not a good time for a good place during the holidays for a child. Are you saying that the lack of recreational facilities is one of the contributing factors because the child doesn't have anywhere to go and socialize?
Mr. Kenya, look, learners or children need their space, yeah, to do their activities. Now, if you look around Rundu, there is no area, there is no space prepared for young kids, for children, or for learners, educationally, or either even for leisure time. So it's not the best place to be so far, unless something is done, but that will now take time. If we could not do it in 30 years, so it is just not the best place for learners, because it is preoccupied with a lot of activities like drinking, clapping, so to say, rape, you also know. Yeah, it is just not the best place to be with, especially learners.
Okay, tell me, are parents doing enough? This is based on your first argument of saying that this town, this Kavango East and Kavango West are statistically known as where high teenage pregnancy is recorded each year. So, what are you saying in terms of parent involvement? Are they doing enough to ensure that our girl and the boy child is safe? Yeah.
I must applaud some few parents who are doing their best in taking care of their kids, trying to assist in the upbringing of their kids, prepare them very well. Many times, many parents seems to get lost. Yeah, the parents are out there doing something that does not even contribute to their children's future or education. Many parents are not supportive enough. You find small kids roaming around, selling liquor, selling, cigarettes, but because the parents are not taking care of them, because the parents are not taking control of their children. Many of them.
So are you saying that there's parents who should do more?
Yeah, there are parents who should do more, because the future of a child lies in the hands of the parent. It is a parent's duty in order to prepare their kids. Yeah, and then okay, academical wise, educational wise, teachers will add 30% or 40%, but this 60%, 70% should come from the parents, making sure their kids are clothed, making sure their kids are eating, making sure their kids are resting enough. They are not running around. They are not involving themselves into these nasty activities like snatching of cell phones and other things that is occurring around our town. So parents must do more.
Okay. Let's talk about the issue of the police in terms of, you talked about this region as high teenage pregnancy. Let me talk about the justice and our law enforcement agencies. This region records a lot of rape cases year in and year out. Do you think the culprits are learning a lesson in this region?
Well, it's a very good question. Yeah, many culprits are apprehended sometimes, but most of the time it is colleagues from the educational, I must say teachers are the ones who are affected, especially when it comes to pregnancies, but other male colleagues, for instance, if a police impregnates a girl child, there's nothing that is done. If an army impregnates a girl child, there is nothing that happens. Or even any person apart from someone from the educational background. So that is why I think it also needs to be looked at, so that if any male that impregnates a girl child need to be dealt with in order to keep these unwanted pregnancies. Our kids are not at peace. Okay. Yes.
Looking at the weather for the northeast this week, there's plenty of sun and pleasant temperatures forecast for Nkurunkuru. Rundu also has plenty of sun with temps in the upper 20s. Kongola is somewhat warmer but also has sunny skies. And finally, Katima is sunny and hot with daytime temperatures hovering at the 30-degree mark.
The Evening Review is a daily interview-based talk show that dissects and expounds on current affairs as they occur in Namibia. The show aims at reaching Namibians of all age groups who seek better understanding of the state of current affairs in the country. This show is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com, and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: Namibian Sun and Namibia Media Holdings. The Evening Review focuses on interviews, latest news, and up-to-the-minute current events. Contact evening@synergy.com.na. Evening Review, unpacking today's pertinent issues.